welcome everyone. Greetings and welcome to Frightgown 2021 panel on Brad Michael Elmore's 2019 film entitled Bit. I'm your moderator, Dani, Bethea, a writer with bylines across the internet and editor-in-chief of We Are Horror magazine. In alphabetical order, I would like to introduce our panelists, Dax, below, Tin and Wren. It's lovely to have you all. Please introduce yourselves. We're going to go alphabetically and let us know a little bit about your work in the horror community, pronouns, etc., etc.
Okay, well, I'm Dax Ebaben. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am mostly right now a podcaster. So I have a relatively new podcast with Mary Beth McAndrews. It's about disturbing movies, kind of figuring out why people are so attracted to them. We like to say we traumatize ourselves so you don't have to. It's called Watched Once, Never Again. Other than that, I write sometimes. Bloody Disgusting, but I have stuff for Gaily Dreadful and Film Cred as well.
Wow, busy bee. All right, Tin, how about you?
Hi, I'm Backe, and my pronouns are she or they. And I'm a writer, a musician. Right now, I'm working on a book with Wren, actually. So we're kind of like co-editors in chief, as well as like co-writing a lot of it. And that's called Transploitation. And that's going to be available right now. You can just follow us on Twitter, but we have a lot of really cool announcements coming up with that. I also have a lot of stuff on my Patreon, which you can find on my Twitter page as well, or just on really any of my social media pages. And I'm doing a lot of music writing on there. So that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. Gosh, you all are just so busy. I love to see it. All right, last but not least, Wren, take it away.
Hi, I'm Wren. Pronouns are they and them. I'm a writer, graphic designer, photographer, and yeah, I'm co-editing, creating a book with Ten about trans and non-binary rep in horror.
Awesome. Well, that was short and concise. At the end, we'll obviously, plug everyone's social media handles and everything else. All right, so I am delighted to have this illustrious panel of guests with me here today. So let's sink our teeth into this film. All right, first question / theme for discussion. This film came at a very interesting crossroads where the pandemic was just on the horizon and few were able to experience this film at a film festival or a theater. How did you all find or hear about this film, and what was your initial reaction to its premise? So we'll start with you, Dax.
So how I found out about this film was, I'm pretty sure Wren posted a very cool, like, limited edition Blu-ray. Am I right?
I don't think they actually have a Blu-ray yet, but I did post, I got a DVD because that is the only physical media they have of it right now.
Yeah, it was that, and it was really cool looking, and I was like, what the heck is that? And I looked it up, and I just proceeded not to watch it because that is who I am as a person. And then you all asked me to do this, and it finally like made me watch it. I wish that I had gotten to see it in a theater. I think it would have been really cool. And I think other people would have really liked it if it was in a theater. Specifically, like one of those like small town, like local theaters, like the specialty ones.
Oh yeah.
I really miss those.
Yeah. Or a university crowd, like, oh, young people would have just, torn this movie to shreds, but like in a good way.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Wren, how about you?
I think I just heard about it on Twitter because I follow Brad and we've been like mutuals for a bit, and I just liked his work. And yeah, I was like, a trans character played by a trans actor, and they're a vampire and they're killing misogynist men. Of course, I'm in 100%.
Spoilers, obviously, in this.
Oh yeah. So to the lay viewer, we're going to dive in. We're going to peel back all of the layers on this film. So Spoiler warning. Sorry, it's too late.
No, it doesn't matter.
And how about you, Tin? How did you find out about this film?
Yeah, actually, the first time I heard about this film, I had written a piece on Ghoulish Media. I had done
Mm-hmm.
an article about Sleepaway Camp, and at the end of it, I was like, "Let me know if you want me to write anything else about trans characters or anything." And someone was like commenting, they were like, "You should do Bit. You have to watch Bit." And like someone else was like, "Oh, this movie is really fantastic. You really like it." And I was like, "Oh, awesome!" And then I didn't watch it for a really long time. I don't know why. I was busy. I don't have an excuse. But then Wren was like, this is so funny. I saw it from Wren later too. Wren was like, "Oh no, it's really good. It's like I gave it 5 stars. You have to watch it," and we watched it together because they just convinced me that it was something I had to see. And after I watched it, I was kind of like, dang, I really should have watched this sooner. It's just really a really cool and interesting movie that I wish I would have had time to have seen sooner. And I think part of the reason that maybe it was not widely known, and I know
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of said this, was because it's kind of at a crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
I know I saw Brad on Twitter just the other day, kind of almost like sort of complaining, like, "Oh, this movie got kind of
Yeah.
like shelved. It
Yeah.
just got put straight to
Mm-hmm.
VOD, and then no one got to see it." And that's really a shame. And I hope that it kind of gets that cult following that I think it deserves, because it's a really good film.
Yeah, so I hope this panel can help put the word out about it, and even through word of mouth through our horror circles, that hopefully we can keep hyping this film so more projects like this are continue to be made. All right, next question. The tug of war of vampires as predator or predatory has a lot of layers with how queer, trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming people have been viewed in cinema's past. So what are your thoughts on horror giving our communities agency, power, and rewriting a plethora of damaging tropes and stereotypes? And also, can we be the villains or predators in new contexts now in media? So I know this was like a lot to delve into, but this film really went there in some ways that I liked. That we haven't seen vampires like this in a while, where they're just like, no, vampires were predatory, like we hunt people, like we're creatures of the night. So we'll start with you, Wren. What do you think?
I really like that they did a fresh take on this of just them owning it and everything, and it being such a diverse group. But like, I don't know, because obviously I think like these characters should be able to be heroes or villains or anyone, just like as long as they're real, well-rounded characters that aren't just like a monolith for whoever they're representing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tin, what about you?
Yeah, well, your question, I really feel like there are so many questions within that question, which is why I liked it so much. But I like the part that you kind of asked about rewriting like us as villains, like again, kind of, and like subversing those tropes that we've already seen. And what I like about this movie is that we see the like kind of change in that like really really tropey like world of horror that I've seen so many movies go down, where we instead have this trans character be the main character that does get to have a personality, does get to have a personal life, and like a lot of the movie is kind of outside of the fact that she is trans. And then on the flip side, we have other characters in the film, like we mentioned before, like the vampires themselves, like throughout the movie, where someone like Izzy, I think is her name, where she's kind of like in a way villainous. She was just going to kill Laurel straight up. She didn't care, and like she's a queer person in the film, which is kind of like portraying her as like she just kills people and doesn't care. But you kind of are able to contrast that, so you're able to have both queer villains and I guess heroes, if you want to call the protagonist a hero in this film. And I think that like that subversion of just the one-sided trope kind of makes it okay. And I also agree with what Wren said, and I want to echo that I think that as we get more like representation in media that we really want to see, it's okay to see some of those negative traits on screen, as long as it's not the only thing that we see on screen for queer people.
Exactly. I know we've, mentioned this like in our writing and in our work and just in life, right? As like, people in the gender variant umbrella, right? The sexual and the gender variant umbrella, that if there was a larger, plethora of films or media or anything else, then obviously we wouldn't be having these like tug of war, good, bad, villain, hero type discussions that literally just be like the character,
Yes.
And what about you, Dax? Hero, villain, stereotypes, tropes.
I always like a problematic fave. Well, not always, but I do like I like the idea of trans people being villains. I see nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would think it would be a problem the other way if trans people were never depicted as villains, because there are shitty trans people. And I think it's okay to like say that. Historically, of course, as we all know, the trans people were depicted as villainous because they were trans, and that's what I have a problem with. And they were also only ever villains, so that was a problem too. But I'm just thinking of this movie that I wrote about a few years ago, and the comment section was not happy with me because I thought that there's a character in it. They don't say whether or not they're trans or non-binary, but they're depicted as like a monster because they're like a man in a dress, which is a whole other fucking problem. Can I curse?
Yeah, by all means. You know what? Free open air here.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a whole other fucking problem. But yeah, and I kept trying to explain, like I explained it in my review, but you know how people like don't really actually read what you're saying.
Yeah.
I was trying to explain, like, I actually don't have a problem with the trans person or the gender non-conforming person being the monster. What I have a problem with is that they have no lines. They don't do anything except stand there. So we're supposed to be afraid of this person because they're a man in a dress. That's ridiculous. I'm from Philadelphia. I see that every day. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I just and it's also like, if that was like a trans person, like, I don't understand. I mean, I guess you all understand what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand why that would make them scary, obviously.
Yeah.
But in summation, I like a problematic fave, especially like I like the idea of trans people being villainous, as long as, like Wren and Ten both said, they're well-rounded characters, which in this movie they really were. Well, they're not all trans, obviously, but queer people generally, like, I think that's pretty dope, because who doesn't want to be a supervillain?
Right. And I love what you all have been mentioning. So there's like 2-3 things going on, maybe 2 or 3. So first, that like obviously a lot of the films that we're talking about, right, or this lack of representation, this villainous brush painting that is on, some, gender boundary pushing individual, right, is always from this kind of centered cis hetero, gaze that's always just like, that's gender variant to me, or like that's not in my purview, so villain, or just to typecast and everything else. So what we're also talking about, which I love, is like the whole kind of prototypical like Disney villain, right? Like the fact that Disney villains have created this community, and like the biggest backers of the Disney villain community, I'd love to see some data on this, but I'm sure it's like the entire queer community, like in droves.
You already know.
Yeah, drag queens, trans people, non-binary people, gay people, lesbians, like everyone.
We all want to be Ursula.
I loved Ursula. Oh my
god.
Oh wow.
And you know what's funny? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know what's funny? I think that a lot of cisgender, like heterosexual people, would probably expect all of us to have like a problem with trans or otherwise queer people being depicted as villains. And I think that's because they think we're all like one note, like, don't make us look bad. And it's like, no, you can make us look bad as long as you do it in a good way.
Yeah.
I know that no one asked this, but you just put it in my head by bringing up Ursula. I kind of made me think, like, what if I had seen Bit when I was that age that I saw, like, you know, yes, it's scary, so maybe a little bit older, but like, would I have seen myself in Laurel as like on the opposite side of maybe sort of like a hero and protagonist? Like, would I have been able to see that at you know, at a younger age? I don't know, just something that I thought of when you talked about Ursula.
Yeah, like an anti-hero.
Yeah. Actually, the entire I'm not sure if I should call them a vampire clan, a vampire coven. I don't know.
Right. They have a club name.
Yeah, yeah. What was that?
Squad.
I did it again. I have headphones on. I don't know why I'm leaning forward so I can hear you. But I honestly love what you said, Tin, that if we had, you know, had the opportunity to see, you know, the diverse array of the vampires in this film at a young age, the fact that all of them had a different gender expression, you know, they were all, you know, different, you know, races or ethnicities, like it would have been just such a like eye-opening, like mind, you know, opening experience. So
Yeah,
and it's not like just a tragedy. That's another thing I have a problem with that we will probably talk about, but it's like it doesn't need to always go there.
So I think this is like, go ahead, Wren.
No, I was just gonna say, like, you don't always need to bury your gays. It's fine. You can stay alive.
Gosh. And that was so refreshing in this film, you know, to just have that like as an underpinning that's like, no, like no queer people are gonna die in this, like no one's gonna be like, so even like the moments that actually like terrified me, this is some spoilers, but when the like alt-right, the conservative, the hate groups like find them and like, you know, you actually see them like, you know, they try to kill them, right? Laurel comes back and saves the day, but that was like the moment that I was like, oh God, what if this isn't the film I thought it was?
Yeah, right.
So that was that moment for me.
There were like several points when I was watching it that I was like, am I watching the right movie? Like I wasn't sure for like a long time.
Yeah, totally. So I think this is a good way to transition to this question. So beyond horror, does this film acknowledge trans/non-binary identity in a healthier, satisfying way for you as a viewer? Is it empowering to have a minimalist approach to the actress's gender and trans identity? I remember you mentioned that, Tin, and I did think that was like, this is becoming more and more of a thing. Like, for example, Angelica Ross in American Horror Story, like we know she's trans, but in the movie, like in the whole TV series, never came up. Like no one outs her. Like she's just Angelica Ross as a character. So what do you all think? We'll start with you, Tin.
Sure. Yeah. So honestly, I thought it was kind of relieving. I mean, you know, there's obviously the pivotal moments where they come up in conversation and they make it known right away in the film. You know, they're at the party and there's someone comes up and starts talking to Laurel and he's like, oh, it's so cool what you did. And he's kind of like, oh, I love that you really like you. And you kind of like get those hints of what's happening, you know, and like when she's like, oh, well, then why did you make me a vampire? And they're like, well, like, I didn't even think twice about it because it's like, you know, anti-men or whatever. Like, I think there was a lot of like pivotal moments where like they tell the audience directly, like, oh yeah, like this is a thing that is like on some of the characters' minds, but then they kind of sweep it back and they're like, but it doesn't have to be on your mind because it's not about that. It's about this other things. Like it has to be said, but it doesn't have to be in your face. It doesn't have to be the reason that this character is important is because they're trans, or they're in this movie because they're trans. It's not about that. It's about the vampire story. It's about like the change and like it's about like hoarding of power, and like it's about a lot of other like gender topics that aren't necessarily tied into the fact that maybe the main protagonist is transgender. And so I thought it was actually kind of nice to not be slapped in the face, and it was done in a way that wasn't, you know, even the scenes that get kind of, you know, somewhat sexual on the roof and stuff, there isn't like an eye like, oh, and like, you know, we have to talk about like these characters' genitals, which is the huge obsession that you always see with trans people on screen.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
fact that, I mean, I don't even think they talked about that almost ever outside of like the main vampire giving like a downward glance near the end. I mean, it's not something that is even really discussed, and I
Mhm.
really appreciate it, honestly, because that's the way I want to be treated, is that it doesn't matter, and like I don't want to be seen just for my transness. I want to be seen for the other parts of me that matter.
Yes, yes. All right, Wren. All right, let's dive into the question. You ready?
I mean, yeah, I think everything Ten just said, like, hard agree. It's so nice to watch a film about a trans character where it's not like you don't have to worry about that being the drama of the story at all. And it's like, yeah, it's an important part of her identity, but it's not all of her identity, and she has so much more to her than that. And like, as we see later on, like, she can be a complete self-centered asshole, but also a really generous person. Like, she has layers.
Mm-hmm. And we love to see it. What do you think, Dax?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, there were that was part of why I wasn't sure if I was watching the right thing, because I kept missing like any comments they made, and I was like, is she trans? I don't know. And it wasn't actually, I didn't get like a firm like answer until towards the end of the movie, where, you know, at the climax, I guess, spoiler alert, where she gets in that fight with her brother. Laurel gets in the fight with her brother, and then also, I guess, is that Vlad at the end?
Yeah,
Right?
Vlad.
Yeah, Vlad like does the downward glance and says like, "Oh, I guess it's the new millennium." That little like one-liner, which okay, Vlad.
Yeah. We're gonna get into Vlad, don't you worry. So
yeah, I appreciate any movie that does that with any sort of queerness, where it's just like not a big deal, because it's not a big deal. Like for some people it is, especially when you first like come out, or you know, whatever, people start finding out, you know, but there usually comes a point where it's like not a huge thing that you even think about like in your daily life. At least for me, that's how it is. Like I don't really talk about it outside of like the internet, like where it's like kind of part of, you know, what I'm known for. But yeah, like it doesn't need to be like a huge deal, and that's kind of what I was saying before, you know, where it's like it doesn't always need to be that dramatic. Like it doesn't need to be, oh, I'm trans and my life is so hard and now there's vampires. It's like, you know, it's yeah, I always like any movie that does that, like with any sort of queerness, where it's just a minimalist approach.
yeah.
I think it's more realistic, and it's also a lot less pandering. Because imagine if this movie was the whole time like, and she's trans, and don't forget she's trans, and she's a vampire, but she's trans. And it's like, we get it, you know?
Yeah.
So I appreciated that.
I feel like a movie in the early 2000s or 2010s might have done that. I feel it.
Absolutely.
Like,
yes.
Yikes.
I mean, like, no one even really knows that Roya in it is non-binary, and I had like that sense, and I didn't know, and then I messaged Brad, and I was like, "They're non-binary, right?" And he was just like, "Yeah, they are." He confirmed it.
There you go.
Yeah.
But like, it was never said. It never came up once, and I was just like, "Yeah, I appreciate that." Like, they were just allowed to do their thing.
Yeah. And Roya, does Roya have a lot of lines in this movie though?
No,
they're kind of like a background.
Don't know if they have like any, except for when they're talking about Mr. Kitty, their cat.
They have another line where like when I know that when Laurel finds out they were just gonna kill her, that like Roya's like, yeah, tough titties or something like that.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into that as well, because we're going to talk a bit about race in a minute, and we're also going to talk about casting, and we're also going to talk about who kind of was put on the back burner in this story, that like
a lot of characters.
Yeah, a lot of characters that like I wish I had seen the entire. I'm just maybe I'm just gonna keep calling them the Coven. I wish we had seen more of the Vampire Coven. I wish we had seen
Right.
more of their layers and lives and dynamics and everything else together. So, question. Speaking of identity, let's talk about race for a moment and how this film has some of the cast members as types rather than fully fleshed out individuals. There were glimmers of interiority, but primarily their stories were on the periphery. Do you believe this was a conscious critique or something that slipped under the radar? What can be learned from this film about how intersectionality matters even amongst / within marginalized groups?
That's a lot.
Yeah. So obviously we were talking about like obviously we have a Black character, we have a Latina character,
Yes.
and we even have a non-binary character who I hate to say like in this gendered way, but is presented as the most masculine of the group, kind of like as the heavy, as the
Or
muscle.
androgynous.
Yeah, the androgynous.
I'm seeing that. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, like kind of leaning into some even like tropes in the queer community that we've seen before. So like there were just different things that kind of pinged on my radar that I was like, with some more tweaking.
So I would like to think, and I have no idea, I would like to imagine a world where they wanted to flesh out more of these characters, or maybe they were like, you know, I mean, the movie's an hour and a half long.
Yeah, it's very short.
With credits, I think, too. You know, and I imagine a world where movies like this can have bigger budgets, can be more fleshed out, can have shots of people flying over the cities, and we can learn all the background characters. So part of me would almost hope that that's what their goal was and what they wanted. But maybe they were held back with budget, maybe they held back with time, because really I wanted to see another half an hour of this movie, if I'm being honest. I would love to see that. But I can't speak for that for sure, so I don't know for sure. Looking at it as it is, I would say that I don't think it was necessarily done purposefully. I don't want to take this point from Wren, but Wren said something to me earlier today about it, and I think they should say it because I don't want to steal it. So they should say what they were going to say about that, what you told me earlier. Wren.
Go ahead, Wren.
No. Yeah, so what I was saying earlier was I think it could have been a choice, but in that, so obviously we're getting into spoilers, and at the end you find out that most of them have been under a glamour this whole time, and I think like a part of it might be that their personalities like can't come out until the end because they have been under this glamour, so they become stereotypes because they're extensions of Duke.
Now that's a good point.
That's like my most generous theory.
Huh.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a great theory. What do you think, Dax, about the question and about this theory?
Well, the question was long, so I forget a lot of it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, that's a good theory that I definitely did not think of. Honestly, like I think that the movie the writers like took such great care with, you know, how everyone is presented and how we perceive all the characters, especially Laurel. I feel like they wouldn't have meant to not flesh out everybody else. So but of course it's hard to speculate, you know. And we can only speculate really, but it to me it I guess didn't seem like a purposeful choice, kind of like what 10 said, but at the same time it's like maybe, you know. It didn't offend me either way, like but now, like while I was watching it, now that we're talking about it, I do wish I had gotten to see a little bit more from those other characters. If only because they probably would have been really funny. Like, that person had like some pretty good like one-liners there, you know. Like, it's hard to say.
Like thinking about like Chad Diaz, who played the character I found, her name was Frog. See, I didn't even know, or I forgot that her name was Frog.
I think they only said it like one time.
And that's the thing. Like I couldn't tell you any of the other characters' names except Duke, Laurel, and Vlad. And that's
And
because you just told me who Vlad was.
right. And like Izzy had more scenes than like the other vampires.
Yes.
I'm going to assume that Izzy is Laurel's girlfriend or something, friend with benefit situation or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And they continue their relationship even after Laurel finds out that Izzy was gonna like kill her.
Yeah, and she was like, it's fine.
I wasn't afraid or anything. I don't care if I die. I'm like, ooh, whoa, like, okay, Laurel, like getting real. Right. I wanted to say something really quick before we hop too far off of this. One of the reads I had for this film, one of like the general reads I had for this film was that a lot of it was about like distribution of power and wealth, especially among like just general society. And so it kind of goes a little bit with Wren's point, but like the fact that all those side characters were kind of muted in comparison to the ones that had that power, the ones that were holding that strength and like eating the heart to themselves. You know, I kind of think of that as like money or, you know, wealth distribution or power, like just in general, and how like those characters are the only ones we get to see, just like in real life. You know, those people who are in power and have that privilege are the ones that get their stories told the most. And so I don't know if that was on purpose, but that's definitely a reading that I have for the film in general that kind of fits on this theme a little bit that we're talking about.
Yeah, totally.
I noticed that too. And it also reminded me of that scene in Mean Girls where she breaks the tiara and starts like throwing it to everybody.
Yes, share the pieces apart. Here's your piece of heart and your piece of heart. We can all be prom queens. Like,
exactly.
Oh gosh. Prom. Oh. Okay, prom.
Hey,
I can't believe you watch Mean Girls in like a bit panel.
Yeah.
It's who I am. You shouldn't have invited me.
No, that's great.
It's amazing that the ripple effect of Mean Girls has lasted so many generations.
Huge.
As long as I'm alive, it'll continue.
Yeah. Regina George, what a character.
Just sad. Janice too is also.
Yes. Oh god. Okay. See, we're about to veer into a totally different movie.
That's the next panel.
Up into our Mean Girls panel.
You know what? Maybe we should keep that through line of Janice, because let's talk about Duke for a minute. And you all were talking about power, how Janice did a lot of manipulating behind the scenes in Mean Girls. I mean, a ton, right? And doing some, I would even say some gaslighting. And Duke in this film in Bit had a very similar character. Like, she was only feeding them certain amounts of information. She was keeping all the power for herself. She wasn't sharing. Go ahead.
They were both like, oh, they did it to me first. Like, that was kind of both of their attitudes of like, they did it to me first, so now it's okay for me to do it to them.
I found it interesting that in there, have we determined if it's a coven?
Sure, yes.
Well, I found it interesting that before Laurel got there, Duke is obviously like the ringleader, and she was the only white one, I believe. And she was the one that's like kind of white feminism right there. Like, she was the one behind the scenes, like gaslighting everybody and controlling their minds, and, you know, being like, no, I care about you. I would never do that to you. And then obviously was doing that to them the whole time.
That part.
Yeah, I really like the idea that you mentioned feminism, because it makes me feel like a lot of people who are, I don't even want to say the word, but like, you know, meninists and anti-feminism and like that group of people would probably use Duke as almost like their caricature of what they view feminism as. Oh, feminists only want to be, you know, all women, and they're super anti-men, and they want all the power for them instead of us. And like, now it's like a competition between men and women, and that's all they view it as. And that could kind of be like almost like a depiction of like how like that could also be the wrong mindset in this film as well, which it is obviously.
And the whole time, Duke as the you know, the leader, she's like, we're all equal here, and the whole time they're not equal.
Not at all.
Lying to them, because
she even says she's in charge too. It's so bad.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to be something. I'll be honest, that only just came to me.
I love it.
That has to be something though, right?
We've all met a Duke before in our past. Like,
gosh, yeah.
I like that you pointed out that she was white as well. I think that's a pretty important like point of it as well, that she's like that white feminist, and that's like kind of like a caricaturized version. I think the fact that you mentioned that Laurel comes in and is also white and then kind of also takes sort of like a lead in the coven is kind of weird how you've pointed that out too.
Yeah, I did think of that at the end. I did have some problems with this movie, and that was one of them that I found interesting. But I will say at least Laurel did actually try to, redistribute some of that power,
Yeah,
I love it. This is the deep, heavy conversations that I wish more people had seen this film so that they could be talking about it and critiquing it and saying like, well, when we get our sequel or our television series of Bit, we can really dive deep into this stuff. You know what I mean?
That'd be a good
I hope
TV series.
I hope she gets pregnant in the fourth one.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
I hope she has a dream child in that one.
Yeah, I'm in.
I'm here for it. All right, so we were talking about violent cis men. We've been talking about them. They're just here in this film. They're in the world. So this film had a blatant critique of predatory, violent cis men throughout its runtime. In what ways did you think this through line worked or didn't work? And what kind of media projects exist or can we imagine that don't have this as the thread every single time for our community?
I mean, for me personally, there were parts of it that did feel a little bit pandering, like, or maybe not even pandering, maybe just too on the nose.
Heavy-handed.
Very heavy-handed. And that kind of thing, I like to live like in gray areas. Like, I just told you I like problematic faves. So, for me, I was like, when I heard Duke like explaining that like he's on Twitter like messaging girls or whatever, I was just like, it's too real. Like
real life.
Like I don't want to hear about Twitter right now. But that's just like, a problem I had with it. But as for what was the second part of your question?
Do you think what kind of media projects exist or can we imagine that don't have this as the thread every single time for our community? Like, can our films exist without like the specter of like, violent, predatory, like cis, men, or that, that kind of specter that's always like in trans and non-binary and queer media?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely possible. When it'll happen, I would love for it to happen right now.
Right.
I want like a movie of like just only like trans people in it, and there's just like a ghost or something, and there's no men like violent cis men at all, and nobody has to like worry about them. They just have to only worry about the ghost, and that's it. Like that's what I want.
I was gonna say, to the credit of this film, they have the like predatory, like, cis, like male, like character, but then they also have the like almost predatory, girl character as well that they have. And then in the end, really, when Laurel turns her brother Mark, he stays a vampire, and she says a line, and I wrote it down earlier, I don't have it in front of me. She says like, just because you're a dude doesn't give you an excuse to be like a piece of shit or something. And I thought that, like, so to the movie's credit, I felt like they maybe were trying maybe to like poke it at the end, like, hey, like, this is a trope that we're also commenting on, but I maybe could have read it wrong. That's part of what I did like about that line specifically.
I read that as him like sort of acknowledging his privilege.
Oh, I like that.
And he was like, but what if I do that? What if I do become like terrible? She's like, you're not terrible, so you're not
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a nod there.
What do you think, Wren?
I agree that violent cis men have had enough representation now. I would be fine with them stepping back a little bit and
just at least balance, like just at least some balance, like we can have our violent cis men and our slashers and stuff, but like give us like a vampire movie with no violent cis men. That'd be something to see.
Yeah, like the only thing I can think of where it's like vampires without violence cis men is like What We Do in the Shadows and things like that, where they're all very open-minded and just neutral on everything and they just don't care.
Oh, I thought we meant with like trans movies.
Yeah, I can't think of any actual just trans lesbian movies where that isn't a pattern though, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't really think of any like non-tragic like trans movies except maybe this one.
Yeah,
it's
real.
I mean, I'd say Assassination Nation, but that's got a lot of tragedy in, but it doesn't necessarily end tragically.
Spoilers for a different movie.
Yeah, for a movie that this isn't a panel about.
Spoilers for every movie. At the end of Shrek, Fiona stays an ogre.
Wait, oh my god, I haven't seen it.
He was dead the whole time.
It was a dream. None of it actually happened.
Yeah.
So speaking of horrible, underwhelming characters, drum roll, we are going to talk about the Master, aka Vlad.
I'm ready.
Okay. We're going to talk about how underwhelming the Master's reveal was, at least to me. And do you think this was purposeful, that he literally looked like he could have been anyone, anybody, any dude? Like, it didn't seem like there was a whole bunch of, this isn't a critique on the casting, but it seemed like a purposeful choice that they literally kind of casted somebody that's like, hey, you off the street, are you doing anything this evening? Here's $100, come play this part. Like,
it was LA.
Yeah. So when you all finally see this film, when the Master Vlad is finally revealed, you're gonna be like, really? That's who's been glamorizing everybody for the past couple hundred years and like wreaking havoc. So what did you all think about this character and some of the themes that they were getting at and all that hocus pocus?
I liked that he was like not cool and not like fancy and not super strong and kind of like underwhelming. I thought it was kind of cool because like I actually laughed the first time I saw this movie when they did the flashback scenes.
Yeah.
And Rasputin or whatever was playing, and it's like rah, rah, and he's like all goofy and like he's like dancing, and I was like, he's so not hot, and everyone's like not, like into him, but then he glamours them because it's kind of like, oh, like it's like, oh well, all of the, and this is such a bad take, I'm sorry, but it's like, oh, all cis men think they're all this and they're so great, and it's like, but are they really? And I think that maybe that could be a little bit of a comment on it, like he's kind of goofy in the end, and he's not even really that hard to beat at the end. They kind of kill him fairly easily, really, and like just that whole entire like flashback and everything, I just felt like he looked completely kind of ridiculous and goofy, and I kind of like that all the other characters almost seem stronger than him, because it's like, why is this guy in charge? Which comes back to like the whole power thing, like he just has the power, so he's in charge. It doesn't even matter that if he is anything great, he just has it, so that's why he gets to be in charge. It's just like, I don't know, I thought that was kind of an interesting like attempt at something like that.
Yeah. What do you think, Dax?
Yeah, as we're talking about it, well, when he was revealed, like the thing that I kept thinking was like, why doesn't he have like an accent? Like I wanted him to have an accent.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just me being ignorant, but
no.
I was like, where is it? Like, whatever. Can't have everything, I guess.
Oh man.
But now that we're talking about it, I think that it might have been like a choice, like because he does represent like white cisgender men, and how they just hold power and they misuse it. So I think that maybe his looking like he could just be anyone, is probably like, yeah, because he could just be like any white guy and he would still have all that power. You know, of course, not in every instance. If there's like a hater for some reason who's gonna watch this, like, I'm not saying every time. I'm just saying historically, you know. So maybe it was like a purposeful choice in that way, but it didn't really bother me. The only thing that I thought was interesting was that the movie seemed to focus more on how Duke was the problem instead of him, even though the problem originated with him. And then, you know, the only other thing that I had a thought I had about him was like his like little dance scene that did make me laugh, and it reminded me of like Ex Machina, that whole like dance number. Yeah, it didn't really bother me. I thought it was a little weird, but it seems like probably the film thought Duke was more of a problem, or at least just wanted to focus on her more, maybe.
What do you think, Wren, about Vlad as the second big bad in command? I don't know.
I think I have a lot of thoughts about Vlad. I agree that it was definitely a choice, and I don't know, a part of it, because all the way through you're hearing from Duke about how powerful he is, like how manipulative he is, how much control he has. And then you meet him and he's just kind of this like really bland, disappointing dude. And I'm like, I feel like it was also making comment on the power like she gave to him too, in a certain way. Like, and then like the way she reacted when she got power, it's kind of the same sort of way, like, you know, like people who've been like screwed over by that side so many times, but then when they get over there, they're like, oh no, it's cool, like I can do the same thing, it's fine, like I can use that power the same way he did.
But I think it's also important, like what you all are bringing up as well, is that Duke is a traumatized character. Like she was under the thrall of this guy and used for who knows what purposes, you know.
This is after she ran away from an abusive home too, to be queer openly.
Yeah. So there's some layers and like levels to Duke's character, so that when he comes back and he immediately tries to pull her right back under the thrall, like it really made me shiver, because it was like, I mean, it looked, you know, like a violation, like a mental, almost like physical, like sexual, like violation, like re-traumatizing her right over again.
There's empathy for her character for sure. Like, and when he pulls her up and like kisses her, and her face is like, I know it's a heavy scene. It's so short. It's not like, you know, it doesn't show much of what really happened, but it's very much like, oof, like, you know, that it's rough. And I think it gives her character somewhat like kind of like you said, some little bit of empathy, just because you're kind of like, oh wow, like yeah, she did, you know, a lot of horrible things, but also like that doesn't mean that she deserved what happened to her. You know?
And we shouldn't obviously also excuse, you know, a traumatized person traumatizing other people. So and that's the thing about film. There's just the layers and the levels.
It's like the first bride, she says to Duke, she's like, just get over it, like it's no excuse to treat people like this, and before she brings Vlad back. But it's when she's like, oh, I never got to be a teenager, and she just says like, get over it, and is like, you still have to act like an adult and be responsible for your own actions, sort of thing.
Yeah, that really got me.
That is a good line.
And as we're like talking about this part, I'm like thinking about like Duke's character again, and in relation to Vlad, and I'm like, was she unreliable the whole time? Like maybe he, like, I mean, he is definitely a predator, but maybe he wasn't like this big bad, like how she kind of described him, you know, because she almost describes him as like a big bad wolf, and then we see him and he's just like some guy. You know what I mean?
Like the unreliable
He's so boring.
Yeah, like to it. But I guess it's also just a testament to how his like monstrosity is not really, has nothing to do with how he looks or his stature or anything. It's like internal, and he's just that much of a piece of shit that when you imagine him to be like, I mean, I guess we don't imagine him because we see him like
Kind
in
of
those
right
flashback
away.
scenes, right?
Yeah. So
but as we know, I'm pretty ignorant about like Vlad the Impaler. I thought he would have an accent. I thought he would be like muscular and huge. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I watched this movie.
The film definitely did fool us because they started with, like you said, this like old kind of oil painting or whatever, this bearded figure, like you said, like literally like, oh, okay, Vlad the Impaler, and then you know, flash forward to the 1970s, and we're like, is this the same person?
Yeah.
Is this a different movie now, or okay?
I mean, if you look at it outside of like kind of the deeper levels we've been talking to, it's kind of just goofy to see like a really funny 70s montage of just like, what is like, it's just like dancing and like, you know, taking away the seriousness of Duke's character, obviously, because that's no joke. But like that whole scene is just really wild and almost pulled me out the first time I watched it because I was so surprised by it.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by it. I just watched it for the first time today in preparation for this, and it like took me a second. I was like, why is she wearing like that shirt suddenly? Like she looks totally different. And then she was like, oh, it's the 70s in New York. And I like how she's like, it was a shithole, and like the way that they showed New York was a shithole was like one piece of trash over her. I'm like, that's what it looks like today.
Yeah.
But I guess budget, you know.
No,
I love that sequence though.
I did like it. Once I figured out what was happening, I did like it. I wonder how much of this film is like on the cutting room floor. I don't know if I said that before.
I know.
Yeah, I just wish there was more.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if some of the character like development is like on the cutting room floor, like some more of stuff like in the past. Like I just wonder.
Yeah, since we don't have an official DVD or Blu-ray, we don't know. So director Elmore, you know, let us know if there's any deleted scenes out there or something, because we're ravenous to have them.
I almost told him about this panel on Twitter. I really wanted to. I don't know if he knows that we're doing this, but
no, if he's watching this, I had no problems with it.
Oh shoot, no, because he literally said on Twitter like a few days ago, it's the anniversary of when I like this thing came out or whatever, and someone on this panel was like, oh, like people are gonna talk about it, and I was like, oh my god, I just want to tell everyone we're doing this.
I know. I just wanted to like stay like.
Yeah, no, but I assume he'll probably have interest in watching this. He seems to read all the articles about it and share them and stuff. I like that he interacts with the people and like his art. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So even amidst this horror setting, right? Or maybe because it was horror in the traditional sense, the film still managed to be really fun, and it was a unique piece of cinema. So did any specific scenes or characters or themes speak to you, and what made them especially powerful to you? What do you think, Wren?
Oh, I mean, stylistically, this film was 100% my shit, and obviously, I love Roya. They were inspiration for shaving my entire head, so that was a thing. But the scene that stuck out to me the most was honestly the one with her brother when he's like, it turns out who you are is just a selfish bitch. And I was just like, that's heavy as fuck.
Yeah.
That sticks with me, that scene.
Gosh, it was awful to see them fight. It truly was.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah,
get her,
like
Jade.
wasn't about it being trans. He was just like, you're being selfish and an asshole, and like people need you.
Yeah, I got that Drag Race reference. I heard that.
Yeah.
They just never stop coming out of my mouth. It's actually become a problem.
Taps the shade button, right?
Shade.
So what do you think, Dax? As far as favorite scenes, characters, whatever.
Yeah, that scene definitely stuck out to me. It also like kind of hit home because like I'm the king of not answering my text messages. I mean, if somebody was texting me 15 times in a row being like, I need your help, please, of course I would answer. But No, that all joking aside, that did actually really hit me.
Mhm.
It hit me when Duke said, you know, I never got to be a teenager, because
Yeah.
that's something I think about all the time. I didn't understand, like I knew I was trans, and I had told a girlfriend when I was in 10th grade, but I didn't really like understand. I didn't know there was anything I could do about it,
Mhm.
you know. So and just, you know, my home life and stuff like that, that got me for a second. Like I'm not a very serious person, so I was like, oh, you know. um
Yeah.
Something that someone else that stuck out to me, and I wish we got more, was Andy, her best friend, Laurel's best friend.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to know what went on there. I almost wish she had used her like vampire flying abilities to like fly to him.
Mhm.
Because she still didn't like contact him or like go see him or anything. I was like, he could have died. Like, go
Yeah.
to
To
him.
be fair, once she finds out, she immediately bites her brother and like almost kills him. Like within like
Yeah,
5 seconds of that
I guess she's
conversation.
not like in her right
But
mind.
but I agree that it was sad that she just blew him off the whole time through like the whole
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah. And he said that was
Yeah.
like the first thing like we see him say. He's like, please don't do that to me. And she just immediately did it.
Yeah.
He's like,
Mm.
Laurel, I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
Yeah. How dare
I got that
you?
reference too.
That I one day, if we talk for long enough, I'll do the whole thing. But yeah, that stuck out to me. I wish we did get to see more of him, or at least we got to see them like reconcile, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
I
and
just want this to be 3 hours long, honestly, for all of the
yeah,
characters to go
Yeah,
through.
yeah.
yeah,
I would have like Tin said, you all have said, I wish this movie would have either been like a movie or like a TV series or like a YouTube series or like just more. Just more.
yeah. And I just wanted to say, I also really loved her brother. I
Mm.
really identified with her brother.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I identified with both of them for like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I identified with her because she's trans. I'm trans. It's a thing. But
Mm-hmm.
but her brother, I love like all this stuff that he said in that fight, where he's like, my life isn't defined by you. Like, and
Mm.
like she had never realized like all of her trauma that she was enduring, like
Mm-hmm.
her horror movie life that she had been talking about. She didn't realize, and I think that's true of most like families, the trauma that they're enduring, they're also like inflicting trauma on the other people in their lives
Mm-hmm.
and in their
Mm-hmm.
families. And it was like you could see in that moment, you know, she had never thought about that before,
Yeah.
and he brought it up, and now that he did bring it up, they can actually like after he's a vampire, have an open dialogue, maybe, you know, and like try to fix it. I really
Mm-hmm.
liked that whole scene. Just really got me.
Yeah.
I love the acting in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it felt
Mm.
really real to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really liked Mark's character too. I also thought that he had a wide range of scenes because he also has a lot of like really funny scenes. Like when
Mm-hmm.
he's in his living room and he's in his underwear and he's like, oh, forgive me for being in my living room and with my boxers on. He looks at his
Yeah.
wrist and he's like at fucking the middle of the night or whatever. Like
I do that all the
so
time.
funny. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, but then he also had that amazing, almost like monologue when he's just like ranting at her, like, "Hey, like you just talked about. I won't reiterate it too
Yeah.
much, but
And
fantastic."
he's like, how fucking dare you accuse me of not supporting your transition? That's not what it's about. You're a bitch. Like,
Yeah, like
no
Mm.
matter your gender, you're being a
mhm.
bitch.
Yeah.
I appreciated that.
He also talks about like her like problems with what I assume that her family thinks is drugs and like, you know, suicide and depression and stuff, because they
Yeah.
talk
Mhm.
about how she's just been missing for whoever knows how long, and are you drinking and driving and all this, and he mentions like pills and stuff. Like he basically says it's not about any of that, you're just like a shitty person on top of that. Like really good scene. Like it kind of makes me think of
Yeah.
like some relationships I have
Mhm.
with my family, and I won't get too much into it, where like there's someone who has that problem maybe with drugs or something in real life, and there's only so many times that you feel like you can reach out a hand. It becomes harder when you love somebody and they're struggling with something so bad that they keep hurting you or pushing you away, and they don't realize it. So that scene holds a lot of weight for so many different reasons, I think.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
And it
I
gives you kind of a more of a backstory on her character too.
yeah, I love that that was there. I mean, not that it was, not necessarily like delving deep into like transness as tragedy, or maybe it's got, like we we're saying, levels and layers, right? Like her trying to figure out her identity, that for some people it's a warm experience, it's a happy experience, a joyous experience, they're supported, they're uplifted, but like at the same time, like it's traumatic, right? Like dysphoria, like dysmorphia, like like trying to grow up and find out who you are. And like I like that undercurrent, that underpinning was there, that like you could tell that, that moment, like when Izzy was about to kill her, or the vampires in general, like Laurel was like, who cares if I die? Like, who cares if I'm like not here anymore? Like those scenes were just like, oh God, like that's real. That's like, whoo, especially like for those of us that are young and like, in the US. I think, well, I don't know if you're in the US yet. Not yet. Okay. Still in the UK?
Are you coming
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
to
I'm moving
Philadelphia?
out there. No,
You're
I'm not
moving
going
here?
to-
So
Yeah, we
sorry
will
to
talk about this
sidetrack.
not on a panel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Later on.
Later. So spoiler alert, sorry. Coming to a city near you, Wren. Anyway. But yeah, like across the United States, like, trans sports bills, trans this bill, that bill, gender bill, this, like, it's like the conservatives were like, the quarantine, the pandemic is still going on. So how do we make people's like lives like even worse, especially children? Like, how do we
Jesus.
destroy their
You're
lives
spot
even
on.
more?
That actually makes me think of something though, that this film actually did. I know we've been talking about a lot of like the struggles and like the negative pieces that it kind of talks about in the film, but I also think it kind of shines a little bit of a positive light on something that maybe we don't see, especially as young trans people, is that you see someone who has begun their transition, they're fully out, their parents support them, their brother supports them, their friends don't care, like they are able to be trans and be accepted in all of their social circles and all of their family life, and none of the story is focused around how that's a problem. And I think that's fantastic, because I think so many trans people, especially who aren't out, fear that they're going to lose all of their relationships that they have with people who maybe wouldn't be that accepting. And I think it's kind of cool that in this film that she is accepted by so many of that. And maybe we skimmed over the part where it took some people a while to get there, like her parents, her brother mentions that, but they're there at this point in the film. They've accepted her, they love her, and they just want to like see her succeed. And I think that is kind of cool, because you don't really see that a lot, honestly. You always see, oh, my parents don't talk to me and this and that. And you never get to see like, oh, but you can make relationships and you can still have those things sometimes. And I think that's kind of a cool outlook.
Yeah, this is definitely a movie for, I wouldn't even say necessarily our generation. Maybe we're a little too old, but maybe this is for the generation prior to us, maybe. That this is definitely a movie for now, like for the youth of now, that, our age group were like, trans was a big deal. And like, it was, like we're saying, like it was a part of like horror films, and like, it was a whirlwind.
All we had was like Boys Don't Cry. That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Or a whole bunch of cis actors playing trans people again and again and again for like awards and like accolades. Wow.
Yeah, it's just, it's part of the whole thing of like, it doesn't have to be this big thing, right?
Yeah.
Like showing that, yeah, you maybe some people give you a problem, but like you might not lose all your friends.
Yeah, no, I know. Also, I want to give credit for casting. Nicole Maines actually is a trans person, as a trans character.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yes.
fantastic because that never happens. I feel like, and to see it. I mean, I can think of a few movies where it is, but it's like they're very they're dramas and stuff. But like this film does it in a way that's really cool. I mean, I just want to give credit to casting people who are actually like representative of that group of people.
Yeah, she's so good. Dani, I'm really sorry if I cut you off before.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I was cut everyone off.
No, this is a conversation, honestly. Like, we all have a lot of thoughts, but like, it's so refreshing because like, and I know one thing, and you all are probably going to agree with me. You can always tell when a film or a piece of media or TV show or music video or whatever is like made by somebody like of the community, like someone who's queer, someone who's trans, someone who's non-binary, someone who's ace, somebody who's like, you know what I mean? Somebody of like the rainbow umbrella,
It's
like
always in the music.
Oh.
Yeah.
For me.
Like we were even saying, like the lighting in this film, like
Yes.
the way everyone just decides their particular style choices, like you can just I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you finished what you were saying.
Oh, I was just saying it's something in the, I don't know, the feeling, the flavor, the something.
They're all wearing boots.
Yeah. Sensible
That's
footwear.
What it is. Oh my gosh, it's the boots.
Fucking boots.
Yeah, sensible footwear. Like
Doc Martens.
No combat stilettos. No.
And obviously Vlad dresses the best out of everybody.
Yes.
Do you like his? No, I like it. He wears a black button up only, I think, in the film. For the second half, when he comes out, he's just wearing like all black. And I was like, as much as I don't like you, like I just kind of want to wear just a black plain clothes sometimes when I love everything. Honestly, this movie was great. I gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd first time I watched it, and I honestly, like, this discussion's really making me like almost sway, like, should I give it a higher rating? It's really good. I think as a piece of art, though, like you were saying, just in general, there's so many good scenes and so many good, like, the music is fantastic and there's shots. Like, there's one shot I remember for no reason. It's just like where Laurel's laying on the couch talking to her mom, and then like the camera's like upside down, and then as she turns over, like flips around, and it's like just the little ones like that where you can tell, like, yeah, they didn't have a ton of money. Yeah, like when they're flying, they show like their POV instead of them in the air because they probably didn't have big ropes and stuff. But like that doesn't matter when you just know what you're doing, and they obviously did this film.
Yeah, totally. In fact, there's only one scene where you see like them from far away flying. It was the guy that I forget what the first vampire in the coven, she was trying to turn that guy towards the end of the film. You see him flying. I actually thought it worked less when you saw it from far away because you kind of see how he's being lifted. But the other scenes where Duke is showing Laurel how to fly, I thought those worked really well, and I liked them because you couldn't really see anything. It was all like, it was fun. Camera tricks.
Very fun. Also, I noticed that they held back the scene from the beginning because it's got like the cold open. And so like later on, the scene you just mentioned where they show that guy flying and they show his like fingernails growing long and stuff like immediately. I think that it was kind of an interesting choice that they cut that from the beginning because that's really all the same scene from the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And they chose to show it after we've already had the reveal of Laurel, after we've already had the fact that they can fly and their big Lost Boys moment. Everyone loves this part or whatever, like they kind of like don't show his until after you already learn all of the kind of abilities that the vampires in this world have. And I thought that was kind of an interesting choice because it's like such a flashback to like a scene we already saw. And I wonder if in editing, maybe originally that scene wasn't even until later in the movie at all and wasn't actually like that cold open style because she asked, well, what happened to her? And instead of showing that scene, they just show like a cut of like a reminder to, oh, remember when this scene happened already that you already know about. Like, so I thought that was interesting, like cut scene that they split it up into two parts there, but anyway.
Yeah. I don't want to like dominate the conversation, but I do want to comment on that because I thought that was interesting, and I interpret it as they didn't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
And more so, I feel like his like rapid like fingernails growing and stuff, that was him like growing his power that he was going to
Mm,
misuse. And
mhm,
I guess they wanted to have Laurel like figure out that like men would misuse their power in a different way, not that
mhm,
way, so they didn't want to show us that. But I thought
mhm,
that I didn't think that would be spoilery at all.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It reminds me of a scene in Bliss, which I will try not to spoil right now. But if you've ever seen that movie, there's a
I
scene
never have.
cut. There's a scene cut from the beginning that is basically a spoiler to the very end of the film, and it's actually not in the movie at all. I watched it in the deleted scenes, but there's an entire opening sequence that was cut from the film. It kind of reminds me of this, where you see what happens to the vampires basically
Really?
in the film. You see
mm,
what happens, and they completely removed it from the film. And I imagine it's for the same reason of like the spoiler, like they didn't want to really give away like how things were going to progress later in the film, so you could have those moments, kind of like the moment where they're flying is I
Yeah,
think
so
supposed to
they
be
could
pretty
like
magical.
demonstrate it in the way that they wanted you to see it.
Yeah.
Ren, you like freaked
mm.
out when Ten just said that.
About
But
bliss.
no, I freaked out when you said you haven't seen Bliss. I like
Oh,
So also I recall that I was the one who told Ren to watch Bliss because it's a really great film.
Mm.
yes,
Since
yes.
you got me to watch this one, so I just had to put that out.
We both just making each other watch like really good vampire films. That's all.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah,
Please do, and then let me know what you think.
I will.
we're
I will.
feeding the children. All right, we've got two more questions, and hopefully these are fun ones. The reasons for our love of monsters are very, and I say monsters like in the quote unquote sense. Monsters are varied and divergent. What is it about them that speaks to us, and why do we often find solidarity with them?
Ren, I think you should go first.
I agree.
Oh, okay.
You're trying to hide over
I mean-
there.
Rin's like,
Let's
no,
hear it,
don't
Dani.
tell on me.
You two talk so much. That's all it is.
Um,
But I don't look surprised. No, I mean, since like the beginning of film, like queer people have related to monsters
Mhm.
always, and it's obviously because we're othered just the same as any other, like anyone who's like marginalized in any way understands what it's like to be like cast as a monster by people. So that's like, I just think that's always going to be relatable for anyone that doesn't go with the norm.
Totally. 10, Dax, Chatty Cathy's. Who wants to go first?
I find that so funny because I'm always worried that I'm not gonna have anything to say. So then I just over talk. It's a whole thing.
I just never shut up.
I was
Just never
joking.
did.
You don't
You
talk too
own it.
much though.
No,
I know.
I feel like that's why I was like, I don't want to dominate this conversation, but I will.
Here I go. No, I love it.
Yeah. No, I agree with what Ren said. That's pretty much exactly like how I would have said it too. Probably longer. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I also think, in general, I think people think monsters are more fun for some reason. And I don't know exactly why that is. I haven't really ever super thought about it. But there is a reason why, little kids, a lot of them do tend to go the Ursula route rather than Ariel. It's because Ursula's fucking fun and like weird and cool. And, as queer people, a lot of the times we're fucking fun and weird and cool and like other, like you said, like Ren said. Yeah, and I always like a specific monster I always like identified with was Frankenstein for some reason. And I was actually thinking about that earlier today for I don't even know why. But I can't really think of like I think, as a lot of trans people will identify with a monster like that, where it's like, you're getting all your parts and shit, especially like
Mhm.
that's how I feel a lot of the time. I'm like, oh, gotta do my fucking shot so I can like get my beer or whatever.
Oh, oof.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, too real.
Too real.
Ooh.
So sorry to bring it up. But
How
yeah,
dare you?
exactly what Wren said.
No, what you
Good.
said actually like made me think about why, because you're like, oh, like monsters are more fun, and I'm like, we literally go through like our entire lives as trans people like not being able to express ourselves the way we want to, and then we see these monsters who compared to the heroes are like, yeah, I'm gonna express myself and like have extreme emotions and do everything like as I'm gonna go as hard as I can possibly go. So I think
Yeah.
that's like why they're more fun.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because when you think about it, the heroes are always like repressing something or like going through something, and it's like,
Yeah.
Exactly. We want to be like the monsters and not repress it anymore and just
yeah,
let loose.
Yeah.
we're out here. We already been through our shit. Like sometimes we still go through it, but it doesn't have to be a thing. Like,
Yeah. It's like that's a good point. Like the princess always having, or prince, occasional prince, right, having their I want song, but the villain knows what they want and they're like going for it.
yeah,
Whether the main character knows it, but we as the audience know it, so we're just like,
and
woohoo.
yeah, and a lot of times they're not even like necessarily like a villain. A lot of times they're like a scorned person who needs to go to therapy or something.
Yeah.
And then I was actually gonna say, I think I like the reason that I like had such a connection with like I think monsters was really when I was younger. I would kind of accidentally see myself in them, I think, because it was maybe before I fully understood what I was going through or the way that I felt about things. And like seeing and like always kind of maybe feeling out of place a little bit, like, oh, this isn't really right. This doesn't really feel like what I'm supposed to be doing, but not really being able to figure it out. And I think that seeing like a lot of times in film, the monsters are like, oh, we're just misunderstood. Like we're just trying our best, but like it's not working. And these people don't see us the way that we should be seen. And like, I think that like a lot of times, that was maybe my connection was just like not understanding also the same way the monsters in a lot of the films are maybe what's the word I'm looking for, naive a little bit, maybe just unknowing to really what it is that is so scary about them. But like, why is it that this isn't the way it is? I don't understand why this is wrong. And I think that like I carried a lot of that through a lot of my childhood, just growing up in like rural Indiana, and that's where I'm from, and just like that kind of experience of not really understanding and not really knowing anyone around that could explain what I was going through, So I think that maybe has a little bit of my connection with monsters. I know it was on the flip side of like they are expressing themselves and they are fun. It was maybe more so like I didn't really understand why I didn't feel right, why things were happening the way they were. So when I was very obviously.
Now, this is going to be a good follow-up question. What would your ideal horror TV show or film world look like with any type of monster varieties, and why? Let's start with you, Wren.
Oh, I mean, what would my ideal monster world look like, and what type of monsters would there be? It would probably be something that's like a cross between the Addams Family and What We Do in the Shadows, but with more banshees, because there's not enough banshee representation out there, like severely represented.
Yeah, I immediately thought of the Scooby-Doo like Ghoul School with like the little girl. Do you all remember that? I'm kind of showing my age here a little bit, but it came on TV enough that I was like,
showing our age too.
Yeah, but that's the power of Scooby-Doo. Like, I think everybody's seen some parts of the Scooby-Doo canon over the past.
Scooby-Doo? What is Scooby-Doo? I'm just kidding.
Well, where are you? What do you think, Dax?
Sorry, I don't know if you could hear that. I was just like doing my weird leg bounce, and this is like tapping. I was just thinking about it. Funny enough, I usually don't go for vampire movies, really. So probably not vampires. I want to see like Wendigos and like El Chupacabra, like just like monsters where like people haven't really like gotten super into those yet. That would be fun and really scary. My cousin, when I was a kid, I'm pretty sure she made this up, but she said there was like a donkey lady who was half donkey, half lady, and she was like really scary to me. I would like if Donkey Lady was in something too. That'd be fucking scary.
I would watch that.
Oh gosh.
Right. I'll make it.
Pinocchio. That is straight up Pinocchio.
Yes.
Like
and you know
too.
Oh, the live action one, they do that too. And it's really terrible when they go through the like water like park ride, and oh, that was terrifying.
In Pinocchio?
And one of the live action ones is from the 90s, I think.
I gotta check that out.
Nightmare
it's really
fuel.
scary.
You
Nightmare
know
fuel.
you're gonna grow up to be like a fucked up weird like horror Twitter person if you like rewound Pinocchio over and over again during that werewolf scene. I'm sure you all did. And the wood scene in Snow White. I see you bitches. I know you were doing it.
Honestly, I watched like Joe Dante's Small Soldiers VHS enough times that like the VHS literally didn't play anymore. I remember like I'd be like, it would end and I would be like, again. like what is that movie for? Yeah, it's got toys, but it's definitely not really a kid's movie. It's pretty like there's some
awesome
wild stuff. Like a very deep memory.
Oh yeah, no, I love Joe Dante. It's kind of like he was like, can we do Gremlins again, but like with toys?
That's honestly what, like, I think I've talked about this over and over and over and over again. If I'm ever like on a podcast or a panel or whatever, like what got me into horror was the visuals. Like horror movies are so much fun to look at. Like you're talking about those Disney scenes, like the quote unquote terror scenes, or like the scary ride scenes or whatever that they make into a ride at Disneyland or Disney World. Like that was like the stuff that like I loved. I was like, give me weird, give me trippy, give me horror, give me more.
And then Goosebumps every Saturday morning at 9 a.m.
Oh,
Are you afraid of the dark on Nickelodeon?
I still watch that.
Have you watched Erie, Indiana? That's a lesser known one, but it's really good.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's called Erie, Indiana. I think there was only like 2 seasons or something.
Yeah,
I gotta check that out.
It's the same kind of vibe.
My friend does a podcast about Erie, Indiana.
No way.
Wow.
I gotta check that out. Do you know what it's called?
Yeah. It's Joshua Tonks. You'll be able to find him on Twitter. He does an Erie, Indiana podcast.
Okay, cool. I'll check that out.
Let's check that out.
I love
Did y'all explain your monsters? I never even thought about making monster movies. So like this is interesting. I'm gonna think about this forever.
I don't think
Dani,
I did.
what is yours?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 10. You were
Me
the last on the you were the last to go.
Okay, I don't know. I never considered it. But I think I really like the idea of having like zombies or like if you ever watched Demons or Demons 2 or Demons
Hell yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6. I really like the idea of those films because I like the transformations. I like I just always have like had a fascination with that genre in general. But the thing I would want to change is I want them to be more short-lived. And I think it'd be kind of cool if there was like almost like a not FBI related, because never mind, I'm not gonna get into that, but I think it'd be cool if there was like a group of people, like almost like X-Files, like trying to solve it and catch up to these zombies, and it like travels, but maybe they're short-lived, so like you turn into a zombie and then I don't know, you don't, it doesn't last very long.
You gotta eat within like 10 minutes or something.
Yes, and then you just die, or if you don't,
This is a writing room.
This is great. This is great.
Totally.
Have you seen the Evil Dead TV series?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the first half of the first season, spoilers a little bit. There's a police officer chasing them, and she keeps showing up after like all the Deadites have already been killed, and she thinks that Ash is just like murdering everyone and doesn't understand. I'd like to see that, but more long play, because they got canceled like every season until they actually did get canceled. But like if they actually had a long play form for it, so that way there was a long, like more overarching story. Combine that with X-Files, so it was like some kind of weird conspiracy shit. I'm very in. I don't know if this has anything to do with queerness. We could just,
I forgot about that part.
Everybody in the whole series is queer and trans, and they're all just like different races, and it's still, but like that doesn't even matter to the story.
If we're making it like that, doesn't even need to be said. Like,
yeah, it doesn't even
not
matter.
gonna have
It's low key.
And you know what else? I want everything. I want to make the first true like punk rock, or like I would like to go the hardcore route, or like heavy metal movie like that doesn't reference like, you know, Black Sabbath or Metallica, or like
Bliss.
Like Green Day or something like that.
Bliss.
I want it to be
What?
like,
Bliss does that. Yeah, Bliss does that. Also
I actually
Uncle,
made that movie, so thank you.
good. Uncle Peckerhead also does that.
I know. That's why I started like thinking about it.
More
I was
punk.
like, Uncle Peckerhead. Yeah, that's a true pop, like more like pop punk. I really love
a little bit. But the vocals. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
Genres.
Yeah, I just want like Wendigo, El Chupacabra movie with true hardcore and punk rock in it. That's all I'm asking.
I'm very in. I mean, that reminds me of like, yeah, that reminds me of like everybody who does costumes for any film, like watching like The Strangers Pray at Night, and the cool punk daughter has like a Ramones shirt on. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's
or
like,
she got the Ramones shirt at the mall. You know what I mean? Let's be real. Like it's something that you see, and you're like, what band is that? And you Google it, and they're actually sick, and you've never heard of them. That's what I want to see. Like,
yes, that's my mission. But Dani, I do actually want to know what is yours?
Yes.
So a mixture of everyone's, because like horror, give it to me, yum, eat, right?
Pretty much.
But like we've been talking about this in our horror circles for a minute about like werewolves and lycanthropes and everything else, and I just want more kind of, you know, either like animal transformation type stories, or like something along those lines where like people are the creature or the whatever 24/7, or like literally kind of like with this vampire movie, like everybody's just werewolves and it's like it's a Tuesday, you know, kind of like What We Do in the Shadows. Everybody's a vampire and it's just like
it's bingo night.
Yeah, like literally like playing Twister on the carpet, like just normal, like you said. I'd love kind of like an Addams Family or like the Munsters like reboot maybe. Like those shows were like so ahead of their time, so ahead of their time as far as like fun family like rom-com monsters, you know,
but still just morbid enough for me to like it.
Amen.
I'm in. I love it.
Yeah. So that any just any horror, give it to me. Okay, last question. All right. Final last question for real. Okay. I would be remiss, obviously, if I didn't mention the amazing project that Ten and Wren are working on, an anthology called Transploitation. What inspired you both to tackle an amazing retrospective like this? And where does this particular film sit in the canon for trans and non-binary rep, like in media?
Wren, you should start.
No, you should start.
Okay, so who's okay, so I guess first question first. Whose idea was it first, or was it like a mutual decision? Like, how did you all, I mean, this is huge.
I mean, it's hard to say because it was a conversation we were having over the course of time. But I remember Wren saying it would be cool to have like some kind of horror outlet that like there was a queer or a trans or something that existed that like, you know, I want to start one. And then in a completely unrelated statement, I remember Wren also said to me like, I want to publish a book. And I was like, really gung-ho that day, and I was like, let's make sure you publish a book. I'm gonna help you publish a book. And then like a month went by and we never talked about it again, like at all. And then I remember I was reading something, I can't remember.
The Dread of Difference.
Yes, The Dread of Difference. It's a book about gender and horror, and it's from like 90 something. It's kind of old. It's a little bit dated, like it's from the 90s, but only references like pre that year films. And of course, it doesn't talk almost at all about like trans non-binary representation at all. I mean, there's like a piece in there, and I'm not like talking bad about the authors of that book, by the way. That was the way they were writing it about their gender study at the time. But it feels very off, and I was almost disappointed with like not seeing myself in the book. They talked about like Psycho, and like even the Psycho piece was about men versus women, male, female. It didn't even really connect to the trans aspect, and I complained about it to Wren. And then that's kind of how I remember. We just were like, Wren was like, well, let's do it our own way. Like, and then I don't know, like we were like, let's make it happen. And then I tweeted about it, I think, as kind of like who would want this? Who would be cool to write in this? And it had like a ton of replies. And I was like, oh shit, maybe we should like actually do this. That'd be kind of cool. Like compile people together and like make a real book. And then we did, and now it's a real thing. And there's a ton of people writing in it, and Wren's doing a bunch of the really cool illustrations, and we have so many ideas. And I don't want to say too much, but we have big announcements coming actually right now, probably. When this is on, like where people can watch this, we will probably have already announced the big announcement that I want to say right now, but I'll wait just in case. So I won't say it, but yeah, no, we're partnering with a lot of groups. Like we're partnering with Frightgown and stuff like that for the release of the book, and we're really excited about getting it out there, hopefully by the end of this year, for real. So it's going to be awesome, and I don't know what else to say about it. So that's all I'm going to say for now.
That's punk as fuck.
So Wren, how does it feel to almost have your baby like out in the world, like taking its first steps?
Insane, and I would have never done it if 10 wasn't going, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. Constantly egging each other on, and yeah, we just basically dared each other to make a book until we were making a book together. Like that.
Yeah.
Like honestly, that's like, one of, I don't want to say one of the upsides of the pandemic, but one of the upsides of the pandemic is everyone's been able to like slow down and kind of like pull each other along, and be like, oh, do this thing, like, oh, let's do this, like, let's, get together and blah, 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 blah. Like, you know. So
and I think, go on, what were you going to say?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think a more important question is, why are we the first people to want to do it? Like, why is there not already one before us? Like, I mean, I just hope that there is a bunch after this one, not just from us, because I would love to do volume 2, 3, whatever, but like, I would love to see another person, do the same thing. I don't care. Steal the idea, but after us.
Like make as many books about trans as possible.
Yeah, like that's all I want. And I also just want it to be something that trans people can look at. Wow, like I can relate to this, and like this is what I wanted to read, and like they can see themselves in a book, and they can see themselves in the films, and I don't know. That's pretty much the whole thing for me. Let's just make more of these. Like I want to make hopefully by this moment we'll have a website up too, and we can just keep going with all this. I just want it to keep going forever, please.
Yeah.
Like basically just don't want trans people looking for books like this and not finding any anymore. Like they're so tired of it. Just give us them.
Or having like one page in like a gender studies book.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, and trans people are there. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
You're welcome. We acknowledged you, and it's like, oh, that's all we get, I guess.
I can only think of, like you all said, like the only big piece of pop culture media, right, that actually did come out during the pandemic was Disclosure, Trans Lives on Screen on Netflix. And obviously, like we're talking about even this film Bit, like I wish Disclosure had been even longer, because I think the pieces that they missed in that piece were like a lot of non-binary narratives kind of got dropped out of the documentary. Like there could have been more, because obviously when this came out in 2020, I think there was more that they could have pulled from as far as television and even some other kinds of like rep. But it I will commend it for like everything that it was doing, but it definitely did have more of a trans femme
And
lens.
I would like to imagine, again, and I've said this about other things earlier in this, I would like to imagine that was not their goal. I mean, I look at like Netflix and they have programs where they have several like seasons, full 2-hour episodes talking about like one toy. You know what I mean? Like Star Wars toys only, and it's like an hour long. Why couldn't we have gotten a disclosure series where maybe we looked at different time periods or different points, and maybe we should just make our own?
Yeah, I think maybe if things had worked out in a different universe, we would have probably gotten the HBO multi-part series.
I would have liked that. Hopefully soon we can.
Yeah, maybe one day, because that was like definitely like a toe like in the water, right?
It was big.
I didn't see this either.
You should watch it. I mean, I think it's more like made for cis people to watch to like.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
And
it's like educating people on being trans. It's not for trans people to.
I agree.
Like, you'll know everything that's already in there.
Yeah.
I do think we should make a transploitation movie though.
I
don't just putting it out there, that's not in the works in any way right
we
now.
are not
one that isn't Sleepaway Camp, you mean?
Yeah, no,
or
I love that movie.
Or
I meant a non-fiction one.
Yeah, we'll do our own documentary, like maybe a Shudder one. Like they would want us to do one. That would be cool.
Shouldn't pitch ideas because I'll just keep saying let's do it, but let's
yeah, that's what I was gonna say when Dani, when you were like, yeah, it's giving people a chance to like slow down and like try new projects. I'm like, I feel like everyone in the horror world, including like all of us here, we all got busier.
Yeah.
Like, oh well, obviously now I have time to do 20 projects. It's like, no, I don't. I didn't even ever stop working, so I don't know what my problem is. Yeah.
Well, any final thoughts about this film? Any last kind of conclusive words or like warm fuzzies that you'd like to share for the viewing audience about this film?
Queer vampires, trans main characters, people of color, fantastic shots. Go watch Bit. It appears to be fairly independent, low budget. Support these artists, support these kind of films because we want them to keep coming out. So everyone, if you haven't seen this, sorry we just spoiled the whole film. Go watch it, and then go watch 100 other films that you can find, any related film you can find, anything from the creators, the actors. Just watch all of it and support them because they deserve it. And that's what the whole reason we're here right now talking about it, is because they created this amazing piece of art.
Yeah. Wren?
Yeah, exactly that. Just this film doesn't get talked about enough. It wasn't publicized the way other films are because of who it centered and the stories that it talked about, which is important. So like if you watch it, go and tell people and get the word out, and tell Brad because he's really interactive and really cool guy.
Yeah, he is. Shout out to Brad. What do you think, Dax?
Yeah, I told you all before, like I really don't watch vampire movies like that, and even I really like this movie. So I feel like whether you're someone who is like me and you tend to be like, well, I'm not super into vampires or whatever, you'll probably still get a lot out of it. And it's just a really fun movie. I know we're like kind of picking it apart and talking about like the serious, components of it, but overall it's just a badass fucking movie and it's really fun.
True.
You can get to see like we don't know if it's a coven of vampires in fucking like combat boots, just like kicking the shit out of shitty dudes, and it's really cool. Heads. Yeah.
Oh, spoiler on that one.
Yeah, so definitely just go check it out and support it, and like everybody else said, support everybody involved because they really do deserve it. This movie rules.
Totally. The sleeper hit of 2020 for sure.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah. That's the sad part. So hopefully we can change that this year. All right.
That's how a lot of the good movies go, though. That nobody sees them, and then suddenly they're super popular. So hopefully it goes that way.
I hope so. It's actually free right now on Tubi, Tubi on Tubi. So if you just Google Bit 2019, like watch, yeah, it should come up. I hope that applies.
Also in the UK, it's free on Amazon Prime too. So
nice.
Mm-hmm.
I love
and I think it's
that.
only $3 if you have the money too on like YouTube and stuff like that. So that's another way, you know, if you have $3, spend it on this movie.
Yeah.
skip your coffee and, well, maybe not your coffee, but skip your, you know, something else. Something else.
Dax is offended by that statement.
I took it back.
How very dare you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for today's panel discussion on 2019's Bit by director Brad Michael Elmore. Alphabetically, please let everyone know where they can find you on social media or what specific projects you're working on that we should keep an eye out for. So we're going to start with Dax.
Well, just thank you for like doing this and having me here. I'm really excited to have like virtually met all of you and be involved. My Twitter handle for my personal account is at Dax Ebaben, and I always spell it out because no one knows my name. It's at DAXEBABEN. And then my podcast is Watched Once, Never Again. I could really use some more ears on that one. And our Twitter handle is at WONA, WONA podcast.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dax. All right, 10, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can follow me on some socials. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at BlueIris04. I'm a musician. I have a Patreon. I do a ton of writing, especially lately. I've been doing a lot of music writing on there.
Fucking fantastic musician. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yeah, wow. Thank you so much. I really super appreciate that. Lost my train of thought, but I am also obviously working on, please compliment me all you want. I'm just kidding. Working on the Transploitation book with Wren and so many other contributors. It's not just my book, it's everyone's book. And I want that to be very, very known that it's a group project. And that it can be found on Twitter and Instagram as well. I think our Twitter handle is at transploitbook, and I think our Instagram handle is at transploitationbook. Yeah, I don't know, support everyone else on the panel. Thank you, Dani, for having this. Thanks for Frightgown for putting this amazing panel together and this amazing event in general.
Indeed. Yes. And last but not least, the fantabulous Wren. Go ahead, plug everything.
Okay, well, I also would like to thank Dani for being an amazing host and Frightgown for having us. And also go listen to Dax's podcast. It's amazing and I listen to it every single week. It's awesome.
Thank you.
But yeah, seriously, I was just listening to it today and messaging him about it. It's really good.
Thank you
but
so much.
You can find me at B_roll_banshee on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd and everything. I'm doing Transploitation with 10. You can find us on Twitter there. I'm also starting a podcast and I've got a Patreon on my Linktree. Everything's just on my Twitter. You can find it all there.
Wow, everyone's so busy. I love to see it. I mean, I don't mean that just like flippantly, like, oh, I love to see it, but like truly, I like love to see this, like near and far, like wherever you all are. Everyone's just like so busy, and I just love it. I just love it for everyone. Like I get warm fuzzies whenever like I do these panels or I just talk to you all on the internet, laissez-faire, or you all say like I've got a new piece or a new podcast or a new musical piece. 10, like
we all need to sleep. Honestly, we do.
Yeah.
Sleep. Sleep.
What is that? I'm unfamiliar. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's where you hang from the ceiling upside down for a little while. Usually, so
I love that in this movie where she was like, "No coffin."
Coffins are dope. Coffins are so dope.
They are, honestly. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter primarily at the Dani Bethea, TheDanibethea. My Medium account is linked there, where all of my work is curated to include at the top of my Twitter page. You can see a lot of the bylines and things that I've written for, or you can just Google my name and you'll be surprised like what comes up.
Yes, Dani is amazing. Everybody check out all the stuff that Dani does. I mean, it's blown away by how active you are. Seriously, it's inspiring. So.
Oh
yeah,
gosh, guys, what? Okay, sorry. Okay. We want to thank our organizers and sponsors, Kay and Joe Lipsett, for collaborating this amazing like Frightgown panel. There's going to be all kinds of cool stuff across the Frightgown weekend. So be sure to check out all of the other stellar content coming out this 2021 for Frightgown. I've been your moderator, Dani Bethea. It has been a real scream. Ciao, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.
bye.
Bye.